Um, Most of you, I'm gonna assume, have probably found this through my Instagram, which I will link below. It's Shanna underscore Lee. I'm Shanna. Um, I had a YouTube video that I filmed, and then I was like, nah, I want to do it again. So I also can't edit videos right now yet, so that's something. But I wanted to talk about my transition into motherhood and how alone I was in a way. I mean, I had my husband and everything, but so basically, just get right into it. When I was like 6 weeks pregnant is when I found out that I was pregnant, and we found out maybe 2 weeks before we were literally moving across country and starting new lives. We had planned to go out to California after we got married in 2013. Before our wedding, we went out there, searched for some spots for like work and stuff. My husband found something in San Diego, and we just knew we wanted to be in like the southern area. We didn't really have like a ideal area. So we were like, San Diego, yeah, that sounds cool. Heard good things. We liked the vibe when we like drove in there. We were in Pacific Beach. So we're like, yeah, he's a tattooer. The shop held his spot for a couple months until we moved there. And so we came back home to Pennsylvania where we live. We got married, and then like a month after our wedding, we moved and started the trek across country. So when I found out I was pregnant, it was kind of like oh shit, like, should we still do this? I think both me and my husband probably had that thought go across our minds separately without talking about it. And then also separately, we both came to the conclusion, like, yeah, we definitely still should. Like, when else are we going to? We might not be able to in the future. Right now we can. We're already planning on it, so let's just do it. My hands aren't really dirty. I do hair, and I colored someone's hair without gloves the other day, so, but, so we moved out country, we moved across country, we basically packed up our car. We had one car at the time. My husband had sold his, like, years before that. So we had one car. We basically gave away or got rid of all of our belongings, like real belongings, like furniture and stuff. We only brought with us what could fit in our car, and we had a roof rack thing and filled that up, and that was it. That's all we had in life. So we also had our cat, he's mine though, our cat Damien, and we had 2 rats at the time that are no longer with us, R.I.P. Lance, Steve French. Actually, Lance didn't go. Lance died before. We had Big Meech then. But we had 2 rats with us and a cat in a car for a couple days from Pennsylvania to California. So it didn't really, and I was like 8 weeks pregnant at that time. So I had just barely gotten over like nauseous phase where you feel like death in the morning, and then like it lingered throughout the whole day for me personally. It wasn't terrible. Like, I could calm it down with like ginger ale and crackers or pretzels was my preferred thing. But yeah, so by the time we started driving out there, it wasn't too bad. But I did not have that much energy at all. I was tired. I did get nauseous like on the way. Like, we were in the car for a long time. I don't know if being pregnant had anything to do with it, but I'm sure it did. But we drove out there. We didn't really have much time to like stop and adventure on the way because of like the animals we had and like me being pregnant, and it was the dead of summer. We like went out there the last weekend of June into July. We like got to California, I think July 3rd or 4th or something, like right before the 4th of July. So we made it out there relatively fast. We like kind of took our time and just stayed at like random motels like on the way to sleep. And so when we got to California, neither of us knew anyone in San Diego. We had like maybe like 2 people that we knew, like friends. But they were both like an hour and a half, 2 hours north of San Diego. So for me personally, like I didn't have like my really good girlfriends that I would like actually hang out with. Like I'm like pretty much a loner, have been my whole life, but I think right before like that time period I was really like learning that I did have like a couple of really solid girlfriends, and I never really put a lot of importance on friendships prior to that in my life because I was such a loner and didn't really like have that like deep connection with people. Like I had like more acquaintances, not really like friends. But right before we moved, oddly enough, I did have like I like noticed I had like really good relationships with a couple people. And when we moved out there, I thought that would like be easy to maintain, but it's not when you're 3,000 miles away. You're just like time differences, and everyone has their own lives. It's like hard enough to hang out with people when they live 10 minutes up the street. So being pregnant and then also like moving away from like all of our family, my parents, my mom, everything, girlfriends, it was a transition. And I think also it was a transition, like I remember when my husband first brought home his schedule from the shop in San Diego, we were like didn't have like furniture yet. We had like basically the essentials to survive. Like we had a place to live, and we were using a cardboard box as a table to eat off of. And he came home like with his schedule, and I'm looking at it and I'm just like getting tears in my eyes, and I'm realizing like I know no one here. My husband is now working like way more hours than I've ever been used to him working. Like the shop was open later in San Diego than I'd been used to. Like in Pennsylvania, shops close at like 9 where we were from, and he was working like earliest he would get out at like 10 or 11, and latest he would be done at like midnight. So I was just thinking in my head, holy shit, like we're out here with no one, and now like my only person that I have is gonna be gone a lot too. And I had a job lined up there, but it didn't work out. We were in Pacific Beach, and the job was in Carlsbad with a girl that I had previously worked with that like moved back to California. And she started her own place, and I was like stoked to go out there, and she kind of like talked it up in like a different way than I expected, and I thought it was going to be a lot closer. And then when I like was in the car for an hour and then went there and didn't even see one person walk in the salon like multiple days in a row, it's just like I don't think this is going to work out. So everything happens for a reason, and I found another job working for probably my favorite person I've ever worked for in my whole entire life, and I will recommend this salon for anyone in the San Diego area. Paper Doll Salon, love them. But it just was a transition in that I was away from everyone, newly pregnant, and I'm not like a very outgoing person in the sense where like I mean, I didn't really go to bars or anything before being pregnant, but like especially as a pregnant woman, like why would I, like why, you know? Um, so, and that was like a, like party, like Pacific Beach is like a party town. It's like a party college beach town. So, um, so we were out there and getting into everything, and you know, as I'm getting closer to my due date, I start thinking about, you know, like the birthing process more and everything. I didn't really feel like I had anyone to talk to about that, especially any like other moms that could relate. My own mom is now, she's passed away now, but at the time, this was 2013, my daughter was born in January 2014, but um, it was hard because I don't have any friends that even still I don't have any friends that have kids really. I've met a couple people like as a mom, and like there's a couple moms now that I have that it's like amazing to have like another human that I relate to on like a friend level, and then they also have kids that my daughter can play with, so like that's great. But at the time I didn't have anyone that had kids or was like on the same page as my life at the time, I feel like. Not anyone close to me anyway. And I also have a hard time asking for help and even talking about my feelings. Now I'm getting better, but at the time it was not that. I didn't do it. But where was I? Sorry, I can't edit this, so it's just you're gonna have to deal with my space brain. So, right, so I didn't have anyone to talk to. And as I got closer, I kind of, I guess all growing up and like just in general, when I thought of myself as a mom and like having a baby and all that, I just like automatically assumed or envisioned that my own mom would be there for that. Probably because like that's like the norm. That's what's portrayed a lot on, you know, like TV, movies, just like other people's lives, like that people usually talk about, oh yeah, my mom is gonna be there, or she was there, or whatever. My mom has been disabled. She had MS since I was really young, like 7 years old I was when she was diagnosed, and she got bad pretty rapidly, and I didn't there was a lot of things in my life where I didn't have like that typical mom-daughter relationship. Like I was the caretaker in most cases, so it was a lot of like role reversal and stuff. But even still, it was like I just always assumed she would be there for when I had kids. Obviously, moving across the country made that harder, but I still in my head thought that like, oh, like my dad works for the airlines, so they'll just come out at the drop of a hat when I'm like thinking I'm gonna go in labor or like around my due date. And about halfway through my pregnancy, I was labeled a high-risk pregnancy because of basically too much protein levels in my urine, which put me at risk for like preterm birth and everything, which ended up happening. I don't know if it was because of that, but you know. So when I got that like high risk label, it kind of made me be like, oh, okay, I need to like stay here. Like I ended up having a Skype baby shower because I didn't have really like people in California at the time to like do a baby shower stuff with. And all my people were back home. So I had a Skype baby shower, which was interesting. My dad really wanted me to come home for it and like fly home for it, but I just didn't feel comfortable being on a plane and flying at like high altitudes, being a high risk pregnancy, basically. And I didn't want to be away from, like, I went the midwife route with my daughter Maeve, and I just really liked that, and I had never even heard of anyone doing that in Pennsylvania. And it was pretty commonplace in California. So just like that whole thing too, like I didn't want to like risk going on a plane back home and then for some freak reason going into labor away from all my like midwife people and all that, and like my whole like birth plan and stuff. So when I got really close to the date, I like would ask my dad, do you think mom is going to be able to make it out here? Like, do you think you guys are going to be able to make it out here for when she's born? And at first he would be like earlier on he would be like, oh, like it's going to be hard for her to get out there, blah blah. Like I knew it was hard for her to travel at the time. She was like completely wheelchair bound, mostly bedridden, but in my head I guess she wasn't as bad as she really was, you know? Like you don't want to think of your parents, or like you don't want to, I didn't want to think of my mom as being like unable to do anything, even though that was pretty much the reality of most of my adult life with like what she was actually able to do realistically and everything. So the day I had my daughter, I called my dad on the way to the hospital. I had her at UCSD, and my plan was to have her in the birthing center there. They had the whole 4th floor was a birthing center, but because I was going in at 36 weeks exactly, it was like 3 days before I had like a qualifying ultrasound to make sure everything was okay that I could give birth in the birthing center. And because that didn't happen, and because she was technically preterm, I wasn't allowed to have her in the birthing center, which is it's fine. It wasn't my ideal, but I called my dad on the way there and was like, hey, I think I might have the baby today, like, and he was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, you know, like I had like a bunch of contractions. I started timing them. They weren't that far apart. And then I called my midwife and she told me to do all this stuff. And then I still was having contractions. And now they're telling me to like come in and just check. So that's what I'm doing. And then I figured I'd just call. So I did that, and he like totally brushed me off. He was like, if you're like talking to me like this, you're not having the baby right now. Like there's no way you're in labor right now. Little did he know that I was. But you know, I got to, and I think at that moment I'm like, oh shit, if I have the baby right now, like they're not gonna be here. Like even if my dad came, like they're not gonna be here. But my dad had told me like earlier, he didn't think my mom was going to be able to come at all. She wouldn't be able to travel at all or be on a plane at all. So the first time that my daughter would meet her would be whenever we came back home. So that was like hard to process, I think, just because my expectations weren't realistic, basically. But and not that that's wrong. I think it's important to honor your expectations and what your feelings were at a certain time. But yeah, it was a transition point. There was just a lot to deal with. We were like in a new spot. I was pregnant. I was gonna have this baby, and then I didn't have anyone to really like look to for advice on that. It's honestly what brought me to like the Instagram community of moms, because that shit saved my life, basically. Facts. Like, that was basically what told me what was normal, what was something that I like had in common with someone else. It was just like that community feeling that I wasn't getting in real life. And not to anyone's fault if you're in my life and watching this. It's not your fault. It's just like, that's just how I felt, you know? And definitely having Maeve before her due date, like as a preemie, like she was a preemie, and she spent time in the NICU right from the get-go. That was really hard because, you know, like, I basically had her 4 weeks earlier than I thought I was gonna have her. So I wasn't really like prepared. Like, I told Tony to pack a just-in-case hospital bag. He basically put underwear and leggings and a t-shirt in a bag for me. On our way to the hospital just to check, which I know I'm doing finger quotes a lot. I don't know why. Just ignore that. Whatever. But that was like a just in case, because we were just going to the hospital just to check, and then when we got there I ended up being like 4 centimeters dilated already, and they're like, yeah, you're having the baby, and I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it. I wasn't that excited. I was like terrified, actually, but it is what it is. still here. But it was just a lot to take in at once, I think. Especially her being in the NICU, like, that was traumatizing, but I think that has to be another video because I'm already at 23 minutes right now, so sorry. You're a saint if you watch this whole thing. But I just think my point is that I just think it's important for moms to know, like, if you do feel super alone during your pregnancy, after your pregnancy, whatever, like, that's normal, and like, I've been there,